The next programming language we'll take a look at is Ada. Now, I'll forewarn you that this one is very different from what we've seen before. We've already seen one example of it in the previous lecture, and even the version I'm going to show here is a little different from what you saw before because we're going to import some additional packages or some libraries that we can use to help simplify our code a little bit. So on here, we'll go to Ada with NAT. That's a version of Ada that we're going to be looking at. So we'll click here. And then I'll move this down a little bit so we can see some more of the code. So this program will print hello world. I'm going to add a little spacing here just so we can kind of see all the main parts to it. So we have here with ada.textio use ada.textio. So this allows us to import and use ada.textio, which handles the text portion of input and output. We're going to make some modifications here in a bit that will handle integer input and output. So our procedure is called hello. So this is kind of the equivalent of our main from the other languages. And the begin portion is where we would execute our code. So put line hello world means that we're going to print hello world. So I can compile this, and then I'm going to run it. And we see here hello world. So now let's go ahead and change this so that we can do our example where we would input two integers and we would output the sum of those. Now to handle integer input and output, I'm going to add a couple more lines at the beginning of the program. So I'm going to include with ada.integer underscore text underscore io. And anytime we include a with statement, we have to include a use statement. So we import it, but then we have to use it. So then I'll say use ada.integer underscore text underscore io. The rule of thumb is if you with something, you have to use that same thing. So this will take care of handling io with integers. Now, as far as declaring variables that are integers, it's not just a little different, it's very different compared to the other languages so far. So I have to put it between the procedure statement and the begin statement. If I try to put it in here, it's going to say you can't do that. So I have to put it here. And as we saw in our example from the last lecture, the format is the name of the variable, a colon, and then the data type. So this is very different from the approaches from Java and C++ and so forth. So I'm going to have a colon, I'll do a space colon, then integer, and then a semicolon. And then actually I'm going to do a little bit more spacing here just so it's a little easier to read. Then I'm going to do b colon integer, semicolon, and then sum colon integer. So these are the three variables that we're going to have in our program. And now in the begin portion, I can actually write the code. So the first thing would be to have the user enter the value for a. So my input statement is going to include a prompt first. So I'll do put, and then parentheses, and then in quotes I'm going to do enter a with a colon and another quote. So this put method takes care of outputting stuff to the screen. So we saw put line a second ago. Put is very similar to that. It just prints something, but it does not print anything on an extra line. So this is the equivalent of our system.out.print or printf and so forth. Now the way we handle input is pretty straightforward. We just use the get method. And what we put inside here is the variable that we want to store. So in this case, it's a. Now we would have to do more stuff if we did not have these lines right here. But because we have these lines, get a is enough to say I'm going to input some value, I'm going to store it in here, and it's going to be an integer. And then we're going to print a new line. And the way we're going to do this is a little different too. I'm just going to do new underscore line, and I'm going to put a 1 in parentheses. And this means I want to print one new line. If I did like new line 2, that would mean I'm going to print 2 new lines, or 2 blank lines technically. So this allows me to just print one new line. So the next thing will be on a brand new line. So now we could do the same thing for B. So I'm going to do put, enter B, and then get B, and then new line 1. Now to compute the sum, well, in most programming languages we've seen before, we would do sum equals a plus b. But in Ada, and as we saw before, we have to actually put a colon in front of the equal sign. So this actually handles assignment. So we take a plus b and we store it into sum. If we did not include the colon, I believe it would check equality if I remember correctly. So we have to include the colon whenever we use eta. So now we have our sum. All that's left is just to print out the sum. Now in eta, concatenating strings is a little dicey. We'd have to include some additional methods to parse the integers to strings. So what we're going to do instead is we're just going to break it up one part at a time. So we'll do a print statement for the first part of the text, and then we'll do a print statement for each variable. So here's what we're going to do. We'll do put, and then we'll say the sum of, and then we're going to end right there. And we're going to do a different put statement for a variable. So I'm going to say put, and then a. Now, the thing about printing the value of a variable is there's this default width. And if we don't specify it, we're going to get a bunch of spacing. There's a bunch of blank space that doesn't really make any sense. So we can actually specify this width. So I'm going to use a comma and include a 1. And what this means is that column width is at least 1, or the width of the variable that we're going to print is at least 1. And that means if it's larger than it, then we'll just print that many characters of the outputs, and then we're not going to print anything additional. If I just did put a, it's going to print this really large space that just doesn't make any sense. So doing the 1 here helps with specifying the minimum width of this output. All right, so now we're going to print the rest of the statement. So we'll do put, and then we'll do the same thing for b. So we're going to do put b, comma 1, and then put is, and then put sum 1. And then we need to do a print line, or new line, I should say. So we'll do new underscore line 1. All right, so that should work. So let's go ahead and compile this. Make sure there aren't any errors. Okay, it looks like we're okay. There we go. Yep. That just took a little longer than I expected, but that does happen. But everything compiled correctly. So now we'll just click on execute. So we enter A. Let me scroll this up a little bit. So enter A. So we do 5. Enter B, 6. And there we go. The sum of 5 and 6 is 11. So this is how we would compute the sum of two integers in Ada. The last high-level programming language we're going to take a look at is Python. And as I mentioned before, this is even more different than the other programming languages. It's a scripting language, and what we're going to see is we don't compile this language, we just execute it. So let's just go ahead and open up, and you're going to see how different this is compared to Java, C, or C++. So we're going to go down here. And there's Python. We have Python and Python 3. I'm just going to click on regular Python for our example. So we'll let this load. Okay, there we go. So our hello world program is pretty straightforward. We just say print hello world, and that's it. And once again, notice there's no compile. We don't compile any Python code. We just execute it. And sure enough, it does print hello world. So let's go ahead and redo all this to print out the sum of two integers that the user inputs. So notice there's no main. We don't worry about a main method. We don't worry about a starting point. We just start from the very get-go. We don't even need to declare variables. We still need to assign variables, but we don't have to say, okay, a is an integer. So what we're going to do is we'll say a is going to be an integer. Now what we're going to do is we're going to say, well, we need to have the user input something. So the way input is done as Python is we're going to say input, so that's going to be our method, and inside the quote or the parentheses is going to be our prompt. So we could do a print statement and then we could do some type of input, but we can actually include the prompt inside the input statement. So I can put in here enter A, and this will take care of my input. So this will actually take care of the prompt. So if I run this, it'll say enter A, and then I enter some input and store it in A. Now I want to make sure that this is an integer. So there is an int method, and then we can put our input statement inside the parentheses. So this whole line right here is saying, tell the user enter A. They're going to enter A. whatever value they enter gets converted into an integer, and then we store it into A. So that takes care of inputting A. Now, what about printing a new line? Well, the simplest way is just going to be that we'll print nothing, because the print statements in Python automatically include a new line. Now, how do we print several things on the same line? Well, we'll see how to get to that in just a minute. But this is the easiest way to just print one new line. Now, could I do print /n in quotes? Yes, but this is going to automatically do the one new line and then print another new line on top of it. So we're going to get 2 lines instead of 1. So that's why I'm just going to print nothing. So I'm allowed to do this. All right. So now let's do the same thing for inputting B. So let's say B equals int, and then input, and then we'll say enter B. And then we'll print a new line by just printing nothing. And then our sum is going to be the same as most other languages. So it'll be sum equals A plus B. And notice that as I'm doing all this, no semicolons. Unlike the other programming languages, this is the one exception where we do not need to end it with a semicolon. Like I said, not all languages have a semicolon at the end, but most of them do. And Python is one of those where we don't need that semicolon. But all right, so I got my A, I got my B, I have my sum. All that's left is just to print the final thing. The sum of A and B is sum. So I'm going to do my print statement, and we start off as we normally do, the sum of. Now, I'm not going to include an extra space. Python is smart enough to know that if I'm going to print multiple things, that it includes that spacing for us automatically. So I'm going to close my quote here. Now, in Java, what we did was that we had to include a plus sign to concatenate. Well, what we do here instead is just we separate what we want to print on a comma, or with a comma, I should say. So if I want to print a variable, what I do is I include a comma, and then I include my variable, so I do A. And then I can do another comma, and then I'm going to print the next part of the output. So I'll say and then a comma, and then B, comma, and then is in quotes, comma, and then sum. And this should print the sum of A and B is the sum. So let's execute it and see that it actually works. So we'll click execute. So we'll enter A. So I'm going to do 5. We're going to enter B. So that's 6. And the sum of 5 and 6 is 11. So with just 6 lines of code here, this allows me to input 2 integers. We take the sum, and then we print out that the sum of A and B is whatever the sum is. So this is how we would handle it in Python.